Good morning, Connect Church. It's so good to have you with us. This is our kitchen table segment. And this morning I have Richard with me. Good morning, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
This is a segment we started a couple of weeks ago because we believe that sometimes the most important conversation takes place beside our kitchen table. And we just would like to have the conversation going about racism and justice. And I'm just so glad that this morning I have Richard here. So Richard, why don't you share with us a little bit? What is your take or stand on this?
Well, yes, it does touch me personally. I grew up in Whitby, and Whitby looked much different then than it does now. I was one of the only black kids in pretty well all my classes. When I graduated high school, which was Henry Street High School, there were only 26 black people out of a population of about 1,300. I experienced being called names on a regular basis, police profiling. It's good that these things are coming to light now, and I'm seeing with social media so much information that's coming out there. With every movement, if you ever study revolutions in history, there's always the good and there's always the bad. It always goes hand in hand. There's opportunists, and then there's people who legitimately want change. And I just hope that people can see past the negative, the setting the fires and whatnot, and truly see that this is something that is extremely important and positive.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate what you said, and I can imagine how different it was, as you mentioned, being in Whitby, 20, 30 years ago. I see that how much it's changed just the last 5-10 years, and I'm sorry you had to grow up with that and experiencing that, and I appreciate you sharing with me. As you talked a little bit about the past, if you are looking ahead, what do you think the future will look like and hold for us?
In all honesty, that depends, because you see, persons of color know this isn't the first time that something like this has happened. It does seem to have a lot more staying power this time around, but it's going to depend on a number of things. It's going to depend on, let's say, persons not of color, white or whatever, accept that this is a reality, because a lot of times that's not been the case. I'm seeing signs of that. You're starting to see legislation change, or discussions on legislation, both in Canada and the US. And you're seeing a lot more solidarity with that. And I think this is also an opportunity to share with our children, because it's also important that we let them know, obviously not all the details, but they need to be aware. This is also an opportunity for all children, not just children of color, to see what is happening and what happens when there's hatred in a person's heart. And this also is an opportunity for us to talk about Jesus and how Jesus didn't operate that way. And that's another serious opportunity that we can take advantage of.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I think the same way. It's very vital for us how we educate our children, and they will grow up in a way that it's new, it's different, and that will be the norm for them. And hopefully, in this matter, it will be a better world, a better version than what we have these days. If we look at our church, do you have any suggestions or anything particular you would want to tell our church members?
Well, firstly, I appreciate your leadership in being understanding. Personally, I've never felt anything other than acceptance and love. And all I would ask is that people who aren't aware of these things talk to the church members, because we know. Learn from those who've experienced it, in our own church. I think that would be probably the most important thing you can do.
Awesome, Richard. I appreciate that. And yeah, since we started, and even before, we always just wanted to show love and support towards you and towards everybody. And I'm glad that's coming across. So, is there anything else you wanted to share with us? Something on your heart?
I think Tracy mentioned this last week as well, and I would want to support this, that the Bible is definitely, and I know you know this, it's a multicultural historical document inspired by God. When you read it, you do see it, but it really is a multiracial collection of books, and I think that would also be quite important.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. And I totally agree with that. A lot of people forget that, when we read about Jesus and what we read about the Bible, it's actually taking place in the Middle East, where even at that time there was a mixture of people with different backgrounds, and especially like when we see Paul is traveling all over that known world, he was experiencing. And he was meeting with people from different background, and the Bible is full of stories with different people with different upbringing and roots. So thank you so much, Richard, for joining me this Sunday morning, and I appreciate your thoughts and wisdom. God bless you.
And you too. Thanks again.